Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What is up, Buffalo Fanatics? Z-Bot here with you, live on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel, Tuesday, January 27th, noon Eastern. And the Buffalo Bills have just named their new head coach, the successor to Sean McDermott, and it's from within the house. The Buffalo Bills have just named offensive coordinator Joe Brady as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills for at least the next 5 years. Breaking within the last 10 minutes here, according to everybody, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, you name it. Joe Brady has finalized the deal to become the next head coach of the Buffalo Bills. It is said to be a 5-year deal. We just spoke about the prime of Josh Allen, how many prime years remain. And the conclusion we drew is that you could hope if you play your cards right, if you get lucky, Josh Allen, maybe 5 years of that absolute prime left. That's going to be led by Joe Brady. The next half decade, barring massive disaster, will be led by Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the team. Initial reaction, I cannot believe it. Joe Brady becomes the OC after Ken Dorsey is fired following the Denver Broncos loss a couple of seasons ago where it felt like the Bills' year was over. It felt like they weren't going to make the playoffs. As you remember, the Denver Broncos miss a field goal, but the Bills call it a timeout. They get another chance, or there's too many men on the field. That's what it was. Too many men on the field. Bills get the penalty, of course. Denver kicks the game-winning field goal. Ken Dorsey fired. Joe Brady promoted. And after a year and a half as the offensive coordinator, he is now the head coach of the team. If you were to have told me at the end of the regular season, so forget what happened in the postseason, forget beating Jacksonville, losing to Denver, just at the end of the regular season, I think there was one thing that we all thought a common conclusion would. I think there was one common conclusion we all thought. And it was that if the Bills don't go on a run here, potentially there could be a change at a head coach. Potentially there could be a change at GM. The one thing it felt everybody was in lockstep with was that Joe Brady was no longer going to be the OC. It felt like throughout the year, the fan base watching each and every game said we're lacking creativity on the offensive side of the ball. Same plays over and over again. It doesn't feel like we're doing anything different on a week in, week out basis. It doesn't necessarily feel like these Bills offensively are evolving each week. It just feels like a lot of the same. A lot of bubble screens, a lot of short routes. It felt as though the fan base had had enough of the offense being led by Joe Brady. There was going to be a new direction taken. Joe Brady was taking head coach interviews elsewhere. There was rumors in the, midst of the regular season, he might look to a college job when it was all said and done. Regardless, it felt like there was one common conclusion everybody came to upon the end of the regular season, and that was the Bills are very likely to have a new OC in 2026. And we were right. We just didn't know that it would be because Joe Brady, the OC, would be promoted to head coach. I can't believe it. Initial reaction here, I cannot believe it. It was less than, 12 hours ago I sat on here with you and I spoke about the candidates the Bills had interviewed. They had interviewed 9 potential candidates. And we had narrowed it down to the list that Adam Schefter had put out, the 4 offensive-minded coaches. Brian Dable, Grant Udinsky, Davis Webb, and Joe Brady. I said out of all those 4, the one that I would be the most stunned by would be Joe Brady. And that is the direction they ended up going in. I had felt if you had a pie chart with the percentage of likelihood of those 4 candidates being hired, I would have given a sliver to Joe Brady. A sliver. Yet that ends up becoming the reality. Did anybody in here think this was the direction they were going to go in? No matter whether you love Joe Brady or not, was this the direction you thought the Bills were going to go in? Because to me, The safe move felt like Brian Daboll. And even then, you were still getting a 50-year-old head coach with head coaching experience, with the rapport that he has with Josh Allen, the success he had already had in Buffalo as the offensive coordinator. And it was a change. Outside of the building, it was a change. You were going back to the beginning, bringing back the guy that many people thought played a heavy hand in the development of Josh Allen, allowing him to become what he did. We know that Brian Daboll really was a pivotal element in Josh Allen's career, allowing him to ascend. And we thought that that was going to be the safe move. We thought the safe move was going to be going with Brian Daboll. They wind up not even going outside of the building. They promote from within. To me, this just doesn't make sense. You want to have this massive change, and you can't draw any other conclusion. If you fire your head coach after 9 years, that indicates that you are looking to make a major change. And to me, promoting the offensive coordinator from within the same regime you just let go is not a change to me. It is just not this. It is not a new leaf. This seems to be the same but slightly different. Promoting from within the building. If you were going to make a change, make a change. You don't make this drastic move without painting the public perception that you are going to make a massive pivot moving forward. This isn't that. Sure, it's a change, but you are basically just handing the baton off to the second in command. You got you got McDermott, Bobby Babich, Joe Brady. This just feels like you're handing off the baton. This doesn't feel like this massive pivot in the Bills franchise. This doesn't feel like a major roll of the dice. This doesn't feel like you are genuinely trying to make a drastic altercation from what the previous regime was. Going after Davis Webb or Grant Udinsky, that felt like that, right? Going outside of the building, no head coaching experience for either one of them, right around 30 years old, talked about in very high regard, especially Grant Udinsky. Joe Brady's in that same boat. Joe Brady is in that same boat, no question about it, right? Joe Brady, 36 years old, no head coaching experience, but you were going to be getting something different. There was going to be that roll of the dice, that gamble that could these guys be the next Sean McVay? Could they be the next Kyle Shanahan? Could they be the next great offensive mind? Maybe Joe Brady becomes that at head coach, but we already have a 1.5 year sample size with him. We already know what this is. We don't know what he's going to be like as a head coach, but we already know enough. What the Bills just went through, 2 failures in the postseason, because we're talking about the reason why McDermott's fired, failures in the postseason. The last 2 years, failures in the postseason. The Bills' offense last year in the AFC Championship had the ball down by 3 against Kansas City, failed to score. This year, the Bills had the ball tied in overtime with the ability to go and win, failed to score. Yet, the guy in charge of the offense, not to say it was all the blame of the offense, we know it certainly wasn't. 29 points scored in the AFC Championship, 30 points scored in the divisional round against Denver. The offense certainly showed up, but it certainly was also at fault. Now promotion from within. So here's what you got within the last week. You got Brandon Beane, who many thought would be fired after this year, not fired, promoted. You have Sean McDermott, who I think at the end of this year, many thought was going to stay, fired. And then Joe Brady, who many people thought was either going to take another job or the Bills were going to hire somebody new and then replace Joe Brady as OC. Not the case. He's now head coach. Regardless if Joe Brady pans out to be the next great offensive mind, as it stands right now in the moment, the hiring, the initial reaction, it feels like a very lateral move to me. Yes, you are changing the overall identity of the head coaching position. You go from a defensive head coach to an offensive head coach. You go from an older head coach to a coach in his mid-30s. You go from a coach who obviously has 9 years experience to now a coach with no head coach experience. It is a change. It is a different direction. But it is as lateral a different direction as I think you can make. You interview 9 guys. You're hearing the talk about Grant Udinsky. This is the next guy. Clint Kubiak. What he's done with Sam Darnold in that offense, man, who's going to hire him? Whoever hires him, they're going to luck out. Brian Dable, man, we know how great of an offensive mind he is. He might have just had a bad run in New York because who hasn't, right? All of these candidates, 9 interviews, and you end up just promoting your offensive coordinator. The picture that this paints is that essentially from within the building, all of the blame for the Buffalo Bills' failures over the last several seasons entirely on Sean McDermott. How can you not look at it any other way? At the end of the regular season, you had Brandon Beane as the GM, you had Sean McDermott as the head coach, you had Joe Brady as the OC. Of those 3 guys, 2 get a promotion and 1 gets completely canned, shown the door, thanks for your service. There is no other conclusion to draw than the fact that the Bills brass quite clearly finds that the entirety of the failures of the Buffalo Bills in the postseason up until this point lie exclusively on Sean McDermott. If you were to have gone outside the building, made this drastic pivot, this drastic change, you could look at it and see this makes sense. The Bills want to go in an entirely different direction. This isn't that. This is certainly not a different direction. It's a different philosophy. It's a change of pace. You're promoting the guy that was in the building for 2 of the last playoff failures. I thought that the whole goal here was to remove yourself from what has happened over the last several seasons. Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator. The Buffalo Bills still failed to get over the hump. He was a part of this, as was Brandon Beane. This was my whole frustration for the McDermott firing in succession with Brandon Beane being promoted. It made no sense. How do you fire McDermott and then promote Brandon Beane? As if to say, it's all McDermott's fault. Brandon Beane didn't play a part in any of this. I had said right off the bat when they fired McDermott, if you're going to clean house, if you're going to make a change, make a change. This feels like as half of a measure as you can possibly make. Obviously, you, me, and everybody else hopes this is a home run. Nobody is sitting on here rooting against this. We are just reacting to this initially. And from whatever I can see, everybody I'm watching here, comments, Twitter, everyone's looking at this saying, what? What? You fire your coach of 9 years to then just promote your OC who was a part of this same debacle? You promote your GM who was part of this same debacle? Initial reaction, it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't add up. Could Joe Brady be the next great? Sure, why not? We'll find out. But it doesn't make sense how you can your coach of 9 years to then promote the GM and then promote the OC when both were just as much a part of the last couple of years here as anybody. How does Joe Brady going from OC to head coach completely alter what the Buffalo Bills are? How does that right off the bat give you hope that they get over the hump? Serious question. How does this give you added confidence in the Bills changing what they've been? And Lee's right. I'm not talking about a debacle. Playoff debacle, certainly. You know my thoughts on the Bills. You know my thoughts on the Bills under Sean McDermott. Could not have been more satisfied with what they were able to achieve compared to what they were prior to. My whole point is the debacles have happened in the postseason. That was the reason for McDermott's firing. But when we're looking at the reasoning behind McDermott's firing, there were other players or other members involved in this debacle, these end-of-season failures, that end up getting hoisted up on a pedestal while McDermott gets kicked out the door. He's not even going to coach this season. Now, look at the Bills' offense has been great. It has. The Bills' offense, regardless of who the offensive coordinator has been terrific. But I think a lot of us think that has a lot to do with the fact that the Buffalo Bills have Josh Allen as their quarterback. many people would have success in a similar situation. It would take a lot of incompetency at the offensive coordinator position for these Bills to fall off a cliff offensively. My whole takeaway from this is it's not that it's going to be a bad hire. It's not that he's not going to succeed. To me, it's just, it does not make sense to fire your coach after nearly a decade to then promote your GM and then also promote your offensive coordinator in the same breath. There's no other conclusion to draw other than the building felt that the failures of Josh Allen, the failures of the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott, nobody else. How could you draw any other conclusion? I'll ask the chat. I see tons. We got almost 5,000 of you in here. Chat's pouring in. Initial reaction. Well, we don't know what's going to happen, but initial reaction. Does this feel in the moment like an upgrade to you? Does this feel like an inspired hire to you? Does this feel like a massive change of pace, a change of direction for these Buffalo Bills? Does this feel like they are trying to turn over a new leaf during this Josh Allen era? Those who are saying yes, I'd love to see your reasoning. I see some yeses coming in. I see a ton of no's coming in. The question is, do you find this to be an upgrade? Do you find this to be going into a whole new direction in a way that you look at it and say, I am absolutely confident in what these Buffalo Bills are doing? Of all of the options, I felt like this was the least likely. Just because it felt like you are making a change that has not been seen in Buffalo in nearly a decade. To keep the same, to promote the same staff felt like an oxymoron. So we're going to fire the head coach, but then promote everybody else. As if to say, head coach, all your fault. Everybody else, keep doing what you're doing. But what everybody else was doing was still contributing to the failures that led to the firing of Sean McDermott. If you were to have hired outside the building, at least you could say they're changing pace. This is a whole new direction. This is a whole new era underneath the Josh Allen era. I'm reading in here, what is this? Dable has announced Titans offensive coordinator. Is that just coming in as well? Yep, I'm reading the chats here. Yep. 2 minutes ago, Adam Schefter, the Titans now set to hire former Giants head coach Brian Dable. So obviously it came down to Brian Dable being one of the remaining candidates. We knew that, but you don't get hired as OC within the next 10 minutes of the Bills naming Joe Brady their head coach without it really coming down to the wire here. Why would there's so many questions, just so many questions here. Brian Dable, now the OC of the Tennessee Titans. So he'll join Robert Saleh. How about that? So you go from the two head coaches in East Rutherford, Robert Saleh, fired as the Jets head coach. He now becomes the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Brian Dable, fired as the Giants head coach. He's now the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. So many questions now. Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Will Joe Brady continue to call the plays? Once again, could this work out? Yes. Has the offense been damn good under Joe Brady despite the lack of creativity with the play calling? Yes. In the moment, though, when you consider all that has happened, this feels uninspired. This feels lateral. This feels safe, but at the same time, risky safe. Safe to me felt like Brian Dable. Risky to me felt like Davis Webb, Grant Udinsky. This feels safe because it's within the building. Risky because, of course, Joe Brady's been a part of these failures and also has no head coach experience. I feel like this puts even more pressure on Buffalo to succeed. You almost alleviate some of that pressure if you were to have hired an Udinsky or a Davis Webb. Because even though the Bills are in win now mode with Josh Allen, you could at least write it off to, you're hiring a 30-year-old guy with no head coaching experience who hasn't been a part of this organization. You're not going to get that benefit of the doubt with Joe Brady. Even though he doesn't have head coach experience, even though he is young, you're not going to get that benefit of the doubt because he's already been in the building. He's been a part of this organization for a while. I mean, if we just go back here, so Joe Brady's been with the Bills since 2022 when he came from the Panthers, quarterbacks coach. 4.5 years of offensive coordinator. I misspoke, by the way, earlier. These years are continuing to combine on me. This was the second year as full-time offensive coordinator for Joe Brady, not the first. I misspoke earlier. God, don't these years all seem to blend together now? It seems it's always the same thing now. It just feels like the same thing over and over again. That's why they all kind of blend together. This was the second full year. But you got Brandon Beane in charge of the hiring here, and it just feels like the safe move is to say, all right, I know you, Joe Brady. You're in the building. You're next man up. And another thing here, too, is I feel like they have lost the pulse of the fan base. I'm not saying that any organization should ever make moves solely based on what the fans feel or how they're going to react to it. I'm not saying that. But the way that they have acted over the last week feels like they have been a bit tone deaf to the way that these fans were going to react to these moves. The way that they hired McDermott in succession to promoting Beane, it just didn't go over well. I don't know how they thought that was going to go over the way that it did. Sort of just kicking McDermott to the curb after that game in particular, really painting the picture that the final straw was the Broncos game, despite what I found to be a really solid coaching outing for McDermott, not only this year, but in that game. The way that you fired him, on top of promoting Beane, I don't know how they thought that was going to go over well with the fan base when everybody was under the impression that if there was going to be a firing, Brandon Beane was going to be a part of that. Then you go into the press conference. I don't know how they thought that addressing the media the way that they did was going to go over the way. I don't know what they thought. Did they think that was going to be perceived well? There's no possible way they thought that was going to go over well, but they had to have thought it. Because why else would they have done it? And then here, I feel like if you had a pulse of the fan base, you knew that nobody wanted to promote from within after the change is made. Everybody was looking outside of the building, so much so, I mean, over the last couple of days here, the last week here, how much talk has really been dedicated to Joe Brady being promoted? Everybody was talking about outside candidates. Should we wait for Clint Kubiak? Should we wait it out until the Seahawks are done with the Super Bowl? What do you think of Grant Udinsky, 30 years old? Everybody's talking about how genius of an offensive mind he is. Davis Webb, he has that rapport with Buffalo, or he has that rapport with Josh Allen. What do you think about the young guy coming back and joining Buffalo? Brian Dable. We already listed off all the reasons why that made sense. I don't think anybody was talking about this being a possibility. Sure, it was a possibility. They had interviewed him. He was the OC, but I don't think anybody really gave any credence to it. So John's saying, so you don't like the move. I just don't get how this all is being handled. I don't love the move. Like when I'm looking at this at the face value, for face value, it doesn't mean that Joe Brady is going to be a bad head coach. For all we know, it could potentially be an upgrade. We don't know. We got to wait and see. But when I'm looking at the optics of it and how this has all gone down, to me, it does not make sense to fire your head coach. You have, let's just talk about, once again, the three guys involved here. Joe Brady, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane. To me, it does not make sense to promote two of the three, pin all the failures on one, and then fire that one. It just doesn't make sense. Initial gut reaction, no, I don't love it. I don't love it because to me, it just feels uninspired and it feels Like, you're really not making much of a change. You're just really not making that much of a change. How can you argue this massive change is being made when you promote the OC who's been a part of this organization for the last 4 years? If we're looking at it, Joe Brady, in one way or another, has been a part of this team for about half of Sean McDermott's tenure here. So if the issue was Sean McDermott and the outcomes that were derived from his coaching, what sense does it make to promote somebody that was beneath Sean McDermott? It could be a home run. Once again, in the moment, the idea about the way that this is going is awfully head-scratching. It's just perplexing. It doesn't make sense. And does it not feel very rushed and kind of chaotic? This whole last week has felt like it's very rushed and chaotic. I'm just taking a look at Twitter here, getting the public reaction. Wondering how much say Josh Allen had in all of this. As we know, he was involved in the hiring process. We know one of the reasons Joe Brady was promoted to OC because of the relationship Josh Allen had with him. When they fired Ken Dorsey, everybody, it made sense. It made sense. A quarterback's coach, it made sense to promote him to OC during that firing, the relationship with Josh Allen. How much say did Josh Allen have in this? This feels like a lateral move where the only significant change is you are moving from a defensive philosophy at head coach to an offensive philosophy. There is no change of culture necessarily. There is no change of perception. Nobody's looking at the Bills differently today with the hiring of Joe Brady. Nobody. Are you? I mean, do you look at this and do you feel like this is genuinely a new era of Buffalo Bills football? No. This feels like a continuation of the previous era, just packaged differently. It's starting to feel to me like the decision to fire Sean McDermott was a very rushed decision. And what's interesting about that is it doesn't feel rushed because of the playoff failures over years and years and years. There's years compiled up of issues that have resulted in the firing. But when you see him be fired the Monday after the divisional round, then the way they handled the press conference, and then just to promote Joe Brady, this whole thing kind of feels like it was just flown into, kind of fly by night. It was just kind of, we got to make a change. Let's make a change. Let's do it. Okay, we made the change. Now what do we do? Now what do we do? Well, we know Joe Brady. The offense was scoring a ton of points. Josh Allen's great. He loves Joe Brady. Let's just promote him. Seabot is never happy. Always has to have a raised voice, yelling, complaining. I mean, I don't know. Crybabies don't watch. Is every decision made supposed to be celebrated like you're throwing a parade? Is every decision made by this organization, is every move made, is everything supposed to be celebrated like it's this massive success? Like, is everything always supposed to be viewed with rose-colored glasses? Everything? Is it not fair to sit here and be a bit critical of how this last week has gone down? And I know I'm certainly not in the minority here. Once again, it could be the world's greatest hire. We'll find out. But in the moment here, it feels as though it just doesn't make sense. I'm going to go into it with as open mind as I possibly can. I have no other choice. I'm a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. I want this to work out as much as anybody. I'm just looking at the way this has all gone down, and to me, the math is not mathing up. Well, Pickle, I got to do a better job with this, by the way. Stop focusing on people that disagree with you. I know. I got to do a better job with it. But you want to know what interests me about people that disagree with me? It's not that it's fine to disagree. I like it. We do this on the show a lot. We go back and forth. To me, though, what interests me about people that disagree is I want to know why. Like, genuinely, in this moment, I'm not upset about anyone disagreeing with me. I'm genuinely curious. What is it about it that you think is the right move here? For those that do disagree with me, that do think that this is a home run hire, what is it about it that you genuinely like, that makes you feel that way? Because I find it strange that you make a firing of you fire your coach of nearly a decade, indicating there's going to be this massive change in Buffalo, to then promote your OC. This does not signal change. This signals a unilateral move with a slight variation on it. This signals a lot of the same, repackaged a bit differently. Let's go to some super chats. They're pouring in. Signified. Bills Mafia, good luck to you guys. Can't take it anymore. Severing my emotional ties to the team before Josh requests a trade off this sinking ship. You know, to your point about Josh, I can't help but think that he's got to be on board with this. He was in the room for these hirings. You're talking about Josh requesting a trade. Well, I don't think he's got the right to request a trade based on the success or failures of Joe Brady being named head coach. You got to think Josh Allen was on board with this. No way they would have gone this direction if Josh Allen said, no chance I want Joe Brady as a head coach. No way. It was widely debated as to whether or not Josh Allen should have any say in this hiring process. We all know that he did. He was in the rooms for these interviews. It wasn't like he was just being briefed on what happened. He was in the rooms. Josh Allen is not going to have the ability to request a trade off the failures of Joe Brady. He was part of the decision-making here. Money Mitch, the lead Robster, some change. I mean, this is the thing. I think Bills fans were excited for change, as was I. I was bummed about the firing of McDermott, what he had done for this city, what he had done for the organization and us fans. Despite not reaching the pinnacle, he completely changed what the Buffalo Bills were, and I couldn't have been more appreciative of it. But once the firing was made, once you saw the Patriots make the Super Bowl, you came to the conclusion, even if you were like me, who was bummed about the firing, you came to the conclusion that change was necessary. It needed to happen. But that's the key. Change. And this just does not feel like it's some sort of significant change. This feels like it really just kind of feels the same. As you sit here right now, whether you love the hire, hate the hire, you're indifferent about it. As you sit here right now, does this feel like a new era for the Buffalo Bills? Does this feel like some significant change has been made? If it does, let me know and why you think that. This does not signal change to me at all. To me, promoting your GM and promoting your offensive coordinator while firing your head coach does not signal change. That signals to me, Sean McDermott, you were at fault. This whole thing's on you. We're going to ride with the rest of the guys we have in the building. That's what this signals to me. BT, Bartek, guess we will never win a Super Bowl with Josh. I'm not going to go that far. Look, this is the thing. This is the interesting thing. Even with McDermott, there was always a possibility to win a Super Bowl. Always. It always comes down to a play or two. Unfortunately, it's always gone the wrong way for Buffalo. This doesn't mean the Bills are out of the Super Bowl window. It just doesn't necessarily make you think they're in some different position. The Bills are in the same position they've been in. They have Josh Allen. They have a top O-line. They got the rushing leader. They're going to be in contention. There's nothing that changes there. No matter who the Bills hired, I never thought I was never going to downgrade this team out of contention. I was always going to look at them as a contender. My whole thing was I'm waiting to see what they're going to do to make me think it evolves beyond that. Going from a contender to somebody that I think is going to change this team to the point in which I look at them and say, those one or two plays that have gone wrong, those little fractional errors that have been all the difference, who's going to come in that's going to be the change that eradicates those errors, eradicates those failures, and gets this team over the hump? I did not think the answer to that was going to be within the same building that the Bills brass thought was the issue to begin with. Hell Hydra. After the press conference about needing change, we make none. And this is, once again, I'm sitting here and my voice is elevated and I'm clearly a little bit all over the place. It's not necessarily because I'm like, this is the worst hiring I've ever seen in my life. How the hell could you do this? It's more so the fact that once again, I'm left here in the past week, once again, sitting here saying, what? Huh? What? Oh, okay. After the press conference about needing change, we make not like this. Yes. Is it by the letter of the law, a change? Yes. But it is once again, it is as lateral of a change as I think they can possibly be made. I even thought that to some degree, the Brian Dable change would have been lateral. But at least then you're getting a guy that I think is bringing in change. He's been out of the building for years. You go back to the prime, I guess, of the Buffalo Bills, the 13 seconds, right? You go back to that era. You know what he brings to the table with his relationship with Josh Allen. Seasoned coach, 50 years old, experience. Would it have been safe? Sure. I mean, I think that would have been the safest move. But to me, it made sense. It made sense. You want to go in a different direction, but you also want to make sure that you're checking all the boxes and you do have some sort of a safety net. I get that. I understood maybe not wanting to really roll the dice on a Udinsky or a Davis Webb because that's what you would have been doing. You really would have been rolling the dice. You're still gambling on Dable being better than what he was in New York, but I think the safe takeaway would be he's going to be better in Buffalo than he was in New York because who the hell wouldn't be? To me, this is a mix of risk and safety. It's safe because you're just taking a guy who had an office over here and just giving him the bigger office down the hall. That's all this is. At the end of the day, Joe Brady had the say on offense. He was calling the plays. Maybe Sean McDermott overrode a couple of things here and there, but 99% of the time, the offense was run through Joe Brady. So more or less, it is the same. It is the same. It's just a new face in a new position. Or it's the same face in a new position. Hell Hydra saying, only good thing is Brady might not call plays anymore. And if that's the case, then what sense does this even make? It further makes no sense. You liked him enough as the play caller to promote him, but then you'll promote him and not have him call plays. We'll find out what the strategy is there. And now that's the next thing we wait and look for. I go back to the press conference, and they're talking about the need for wide receiver, asking Brandon Beane about the failures at bringing in wide receiver. And Terry Pagula steps in and he says, I want to, allow me to speak here. The Keon Coleman draft pick was because of the coaches, not Brandon Beane. Yet you promote your offensive coach? I'm not saying Joe Brady signed off on the Coleman pick or he was demanding the Coleman pick or he was pounding the table for it. I'm not saying that. But once again, I'm talking about this whole thing from a public perception side of things. You try to save Brandon Beane's image by saying that he wasn't the one pushing for Coleman. It wasn't his call. You do so by pinning it on the coaching staff. But apparently it wasn't the blame of McDermott, but he had already been fired, whatever. But you're pinning it on the coaching staff. Yet the lead guy in charge of the offense is promoted? And you got to think, if Joe Brady's promoted, like how many new faces are we going to see in the building? I would imagine a lot of the offensive coaching staff's going to be retained. It was underneath of him. That's the question, though. How many changes is Joe Brady going to make? What's that going to look like? There's so many questions now. Justin 9860. We need to boycott this team until everyone is gone. Everyone. The dream is dead and Pagula and Beane have killed it. It is over. I am not even close to there, and here's why. I am no matter who they hired, for God's sakes, they could have hired Rex Ryan off of the first take set. Would I have hated it? Yes. But I will never get to the point where I say the dream is dead with Josh Allen. This just goes to show you how important Josh Allen is and how much confidence he gives us. The fact that you could have essentially hired anyone and still had confidence in the Bills to be a contender solely comes down to the fact that they have Josh Allen. Yes, I know he came up short against Denver and did not play well. But in totality, there's one reason why you continue to have confidence in Buffalo regardless of what they do, and it's because of 17. So I'm not there. But if I'm looking at the decision-making here beyond Josh Allen, I am left scratching my head. I am left quite perplexed. Fluff, get ready for the Blame McDermott game to prop up Brady's promotion. The repetitive offensive calls will now be McDermott's fault. They didn't even take a swing. They bunted. That's a perfect way to put it, Fluff. This does not feel like you were swinging for the fences. This felt like you were just trying to get on base. This did not feel like you were trying to hit something out of the park. It felt like you were just trying to get to first. The other thing is here, too, say the Bills come up short again this upcoming year. Terry Pagula flat out said the next head coach, it won't be Super Bowl or bust. It was Super Bowl or bust quite clearly while Joe Brady was in the building. Now, all of a sudden, because he has a different role within the organization, it's not Super Bowl or bust anymore. If you were to have hired outside of the building and they came up short, you could have said, we got to give it some time. Guy hasn't been in the building in a while, or he's never been in the building. We got to give it some time. You don't get that. You don't get the benefit of the doubt now because you promote from within that regime, from within the building. You promote from underneath of Sean McDermott's coaching staff. Because you do that, you no longer get the benefit of the doubt of saying it was McDermott's fault. Now, the pressure on Joe Brady here is massive. More than any other coach would have faced coming in here. Whoever took this job was going to be under a lot of pressure, maybe the most of any coach in this hiring cycle because of what was at stake, this and the Baltimore job. The right to coach two of the best quarterbacks to play. The right to have the opportunity to get them to a Super Bowl and win one. The pressure was going to be packed. But if you went outside of the building, there would be a little bit of grace just because of the newness of it, the change. Regardless of what you think of Joe Brady, there's not going to be any grace given. If they come up short, the first thing that's going to be said is, how the hell could you have promoted Joe Brady to head coach? We knew this was going to happen. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to be said. It's going to be all the same stuff, just with a new guy taking the blame. All the things you heard about McDermott at the end of the season when they came up short, that will now be the exact same, just pushed over to Joe Brady. The sentiment will be, Joe Brady was in the building for the last 4 years and they still came up short. Then you promoted him. What did you think was going to happen? It's the same thing. Why would you do this? That's what's going to be said. If you had brought in a new face, I think there would have been a little bit of grace. We got to we got to give the guy some time. You could say the same for Joe Brady. The problem is it's tough to give the guy time when he's been part of this coaching staff for the last 4 years. There's not going to be any grace. So that adds tenfold the pressure to Joe Brady than it would have been on anybody else, which is saying something. Chromatic Wanderer. I'm not watching the games next year. Wow, I mean, people are really shaken up by this. You know, I had said, let me read this up. I'm not watching the games next year. I lose sleep to watch the games on Sunday because I work third shift. I'm not wasting my time. What's really sad about this whole process is Chromatic's not alone in this. We've already seen multiple super chats come in, and those are just super chats. God knows how many other people feel like Chromatic does. And what sucks about that is the Bills built up so much goodwill over nearly a decade. And within a week's time here, regardless of how this pans out, it's going to need to take a Super Bowl appearance to build back that goodwill again. 9 years of goodwill built up, and a large chunk of it has been ripped off within 1 week's time. Where you got people like Chromatic and many others saying, I can't do this anymore. This doesn't make any sense. How can I sign up for this? The thing is, Chromatic, you will sign up for it, and everybody else in here will. You wouldn't be watching me if you weren't. You wouldn't be watching me if you didn't care. You will sign up, but I know what you're saying. You're saying I'm beyond frustrated. I'm beyond confused. I don't get this. Why are they doing this? This is what this hiring indicates. And this is where I feel like they did not have a grip on how this was going to land. Clearly, they didn't care. And once again, you don't make decisions based on how the fan base is going to react. But it just feels like they have no idea what this fan base feels. It felt like the firing for McDermott, it felt like they thought the perception was going to be, yes, great move. Brandon Beane drafted Josh Allen. Of course we got to promote him. We all love him. When in reality, I think by the end of it, a lot of people were like, man, this was the best year McDermott's had in some time. If you had fired him after 13 seconds, everything would have been different. Nobody would have complained. Everybody would have been on board. If you would have fired him after 13 seconds, everybody would have sat there that Monday and said, I get it, including myself. I get it. You just had one of the worst postseason gaffes in NFL history, so bad that it quite literally has its own name. Only the most iconic moments in the sport have their own name, right? Minneapolis Miracle, Music City Miracle, The Catch, 13 seconds. If you were to have been fired after that, if Sean McDermott would have been moved on from after that, there would have been no questioning of it. Instead, you stick with him for another near half decade. And the straw that breaks the camel's back winds up being a year where you felt like the blame really wasn't on him, not nearly in the comparison as to what it was in the years prior. And it felt like a lot of people were putting blame on the offensive coordinator. He's promoted. Felt like way more people were putting blame on the GM. He's retained and promoted. Wow, super chats are pouring in, by the way. I'll get to all of them. They are pouring in. We got 6,500 of you in here on a Tuesday afternoon as Joe Brady is promoted from offensive coordinator to Buffalo Bills head coach to succeed Sean McDermott. Teddy, we needed change, and all we got was, Sean, you're the only issue. This wasn't the fix needed, and this org remains wholly incompetent. This seems to be the general perception here, and it doesn't seem to be just amongst Bills fans. I see non-Bills fans celebrating this. All we can hope for is that everyone's wrong. Once again, is the move itself, is Joe Brady as a head coach in and of itself a bad move? I don't think anybody can make that conclusion yet. We don't know. If you were willing to say that it was Udinsky was going to be a good move and Davis Webb was going to be a good move with no coaching experience, it's hard to say that all of a sudden Joe Brady isn't going to be a good move because he's in that same boat. Once again, though, there's no grace given because of the fact that he's been in this building for 4 years, because of the fact that he was in charge of Josh Allen and the offense, and they still came up short each and every year. There's no grace given. You would have had a far longer leash if you had gone outside of the building. Once again, when you indicate that massive change is around the bend and then do this, the fan base doesn't know what to make of it. You come out and fire your head coach of nearly a decade. You put together this press conference that's all over the place. The fan base is left questioning what's going on, and then you double down on that by promoting from within. That's what doesn't make sense about any of this. It's not that Joe Brady's a bad head coach, potentially. It's more so, how does this make sense? You already had Joe Brady in the building calling the offense. What's really going to, how much is going to change? Thomas, this is like crapping your pants and changing your shirt. Wow, what a way to put it. What a way to put it, Thomas. It feels like a Band-Aid. It feels like a Band-Aid. And it just, now that we're looking at all of this in retrospect, it all just feels incredibly rushed and incredibly brash. It just feels like we got to make a change. Like when Terry Pagula said that he made this decision exclusively on his own, and when he said he made this decision after the Denver game, I know it was the culmination of all the failures up until Denver, and then Denver wound up being the exclamation point. But it does feel more and more like the Denver game was really the ultimate, I'm just making a change no matter what. I'm not even going to consider anything else. It felt like we're making a move. We'll figure it out later. Because you make that move and then you say, all right, I made the move. Now, Brandon Beane, I know you've been a part of these failures, but you're in charge now of figuring it out. And the answer, the solution is just promoting the OC. The Buffalonian. We just got bubble screened into being Sabres fans. Wow. Think out loud. They better bring in Jim Schwartz, not keep Bobby. This looks like a Jerry Jones hire, someone King Bean can control. Wow. I mean, when you put it that way, right? Jerry Jones often has been criticized for hiring guys that he feels like he can be the puppet master to, that he has grand control over. Now, at the end of the day, Brandon Bean was going to have control over anybody. He's the president of football operations and the GM, and obviously Terry Pagula views him in a very high regard. Obviously, Terry Pagula views Brandon Bean as a step beneath him in this organization. Pagula's the owner, and then he looks to Brandon Bean to be his guy for everything else. So Brandon Bean was going to have final say and control over whoever, but this does kind of paint that picture, doesn't it? Where it just feels like this is the safe move. Joe Brady's been answering to me for the last 4 years anyways. Let's just roll with it. Once again, is that the case? Maybe not, but this is how it looks. Now we're talking about Jim Schwartz, right? As DC, this is the questions. These are the questions now we're wondering. Defensive coordinator for the Browns. I mean, is he even going to be available? Is he going to make a move? He could be, with the Browns coaching situation, by the way, the Browns had fired their coach weeks before the Bills had fired Sean McDermott. They still haven't found a coach. I don't even think they're Rooney Rule compliant yet. The Browns have completely bungled this whole thing. What else is new? I don't think anybody would be shocked if Jim Schwartz was promoted as head coach for the Browns because they're running out of candidates. The amount of people that have backed out of that job to begin with, now you're coming down to the fact that there really isn't that many options left. Brian Dable no longer available. He takes the OC job in Tennessee. Mike McDaniel no longer available. He takes the OC job in LA. These candidates are falling off. They're gone one by one here. Udinsky, it was said that if he didn't get the Bills job, he was going to go back to being the OC of the Jaguars. So I'm imagining that's going to be solidified within the week here. Who's going to be the Browns coach? Nobody wants that job. So they very likely could just promote him. I'm looking at this right now, and I'm thinking to myself, is he even going to be in the cards? So who's going to be on the table for defensive coordinator? Brian Flores signs an extension with the Vikings. Jim Schwartz, I don't know. I feel like he could easily be the next head coach of the Browns. Clout's agreeing with what we had just read prior with the Jerry Jones comparison that Think Out Loud just made. Clout's saying this is a puppet hire for Bean. Once again, everybody was under this impression that Brandon Bean was just as much at fault as Sean McDermott. So now when you upgrade his title, put him in charge, and then he makes a move like this is the takeaway. Yeah, it kind of seems like Brandon Bean's just kind of doing what's best for Bean. Like, this is what people are thinking. And it's hard not to think that way, the way this is all being carried out. Hal Hydra saying Udinsky would have been so much better, brought innovation. Now it's 2015 all over again. Missed Shanahan and got Rex because Kyle wasn't ready yet. Yeah, and you look back last year, like who you could have had if you had made this move a year ago with the same result. You got farther last year, was the same result. You're a missed catch away from moving on. You could have had Ben Johnson. Once again, this move just felt like it was very rushed. What changed what changed in year 8 to year 9, other than just one more playoff failure? It's all been the same thing. The only way this ever would have made unequivocal sense is if you were to have done it right after 13 seconds, or you did it last year with the coaching candidates that were available, right? Because you had Ben Johnson available. You had Liam Cohen available. You had Mike Vrabel available. He was probably always going to take the Patriots job, but still, you had the candidates for selection last year were far broader and far more desirable than they were this year. Now I wonder, here's what I wonder. We're talking about DC just real quick. What's Mike Tomlin up to in 2026? Mike Tomlin, what are you up to in 2026? I doubt you want to go coach the Browns. What are you up to? You want to come lead a defense and potentially go and win one here? What's Mike Tomlin up to? Maybe he takes a year off. That's starting to look more and more likely. The weird thing about this hire is that you're losing Sean McDermott's defense to keep the same offense. You're not going to get any significant offensive changes. You've seen what the offense has been the last handful of years with Joe Brady. But what you're losing here is Sean McDermott's defense, which for the most part, under Sean McDermott's tenure, they had one of the best defenses in the entire NFL throughout. Last 5 years, number one scoring defense in the NFL. Yes, it had its pitfalls in the postseason, but so did the offense. I know the offense scored 30 against Denver. I know they scored 29 against Kansas City, but it still came down to them having an opportunity in the end, and they failed. Even 3 years ago, 3 years in a row, the Bills lost by 3 points. And in all three of those games, the Bills had the ball on a final drive to go and either tie it or win it. They fouled on all three. Is that not just as much of the fault of the offense as it is the defense? I understand they put up points, 24, 29, 30. I get that. But at the end of the day, regardless of the amount of points they scored up until the end, they had a chance at the end to win. In all three games, they failed on all three. You go down the field against the Chiefs in the divisional round at home, Tyler Bass missed field goal. You get the ball down 3 against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. You don't even get a first down. Dalton Kincaid drops an unbelievable throw from Josh Allen that would have been an unbelievable play. You get the ball in overtime against the Broncos. They had already had a possession. A field goal wins it. You don't even get into scoring range. All three of the last 3 postseason games, all 3 of them, the offense failed at the end. So now with the promotion of Joe Brady, you're going to keep the same offense more or less. The personnel, I would imagine, is going to be upgraded here. How could Bean not upgrade? Then again, did he make this massive upgrade at head coach? No. So it makes you wonder if there's going to be massive upgrades to personnel on the horizon. But with the promotion of Joe Brady, you are then losing the defense of Sean McDermott, and you got to replace that. It's the one thing that doesn't get talked about enough with losing John McDermott. Yes, you're losing the culture builder. Yes, you're losing what seemed to be a great guy in the community. Everybody loved him, regardless of what he did on the field. Sean McDermott, the guy, everybody really seemed to really like Sean McDermott. You're losing that, sure. But the X's and O's, the one thing I feel like is not talked about enough is you're also losing that defensive coach that needs to be replaced. So now you are losing that defense and keeping the same offense. Caleb saying, but 5-2-3-2-2-2-6, that was a catch, promotes Brady. Once again, yeah, it just felt like we're talking a big game here. We're talking a big game here. Failures. We need change, and here's your change. Joe Brady moving from one office to a bigger office. Bartek BT, how many times we missed on first and second down and had a third and long? Hopefully they bring some experience to DC. Maybe Davis Webb OC will be the saving grace, and that could be potential, right? Because Davis Webb hasn't even been an offensive coordinator yet. He was the quarterback's coach in Denver. He has not been a coordinator yet. Maybe he takes that job with Joe Brady. Where you're left scratching your head is Terry Pagula said they hit the proverbial wall in the playoffs. Would that not mean that they hit the proverbial wall with everybody? Or does that clearly just mean they hit the proverbial wall with Sean McDermott? 3 straight years, I just listed off to you, 3 straight years where the offense had the ball in the end and they failed to score to either tie or win it. Does that not indicate a proverbial wall being hit as well? Did the offense not hit a proverbial wall where in 3 consecutive seasons it all sort of ends the same? Is that not also a proverbial wall? Mutt Bones, you just went from Marcus Aurelius to Commodus. I don't even know what that means. I got a feeling it's not great. Newbie driver, Z-Bot, when Josh turns into Launchpad McQuack, Can Joe Brady turn him back into superhero Josh? What say you? Well, he hasn't been superhero Josh in terms of what he was under Dable, right? Like they were air raid hour against with Brian Dable, right? Launching the ball. But they've gone more with a conservative approach, quite clearly with Joe Brady. Now it's worked. Still scoring a ton of points, still up there towards the top of the league in offense. Run game has gotten significantly better. One of the best in the league, if not the best. I don't think we're going to see this significant change on offense. What would lead you to believe that we would? It's the offensive coordinator being promoted. Why would the offense change significantly? Why would Josh Allen change significantly? Really, why would anything change significantly? Jim Johnson, KC fan here. I love this move. Keep the Crycast coming for another 5 years. Woohoo. Love you, bot. I wish you were in KC. You are very entertaining. Oh, man. Jim, appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the support. I mean, you got Chiefs fans celebrating this. Richie Fresh. Wow, Richie taking the positive angle here. Respectfully, this may be an overreaction. Let's see who the OC is. Brady offense typically ain't the reason we lose in the playoff. It's mostly the D. Yes, it's mostly the D, Richie. But once again, mostly. That would indicate that there's other blame at hand. Sean McDermott, most of the blame. Okay, that's fair. We can make that argument. Sean McDermott, most of the blame. The move to promote Bean and the move to promote Joe Brady indicates that Sean McDermott was all of the blame. All of it. Now, when you say, let's see who the OC is, well, that's what's interesting. Say you bring in an OC. Say Davis Webb comes in as OC, and it's great. If Davis Webb was already up for a head coach spot this year without even being an OC, he was already getting head coach looks this year. Say the Bills do bring in Davis Webb at OC, and he has a phenomenal year. He will be hired by another team the following year as head coach, guaranteed. If he comes in and has a stupendous year with Buffalo, why would he not get a head coach job afterwards? It's already happened twice here. Brian Dable, great years with Buffalo, head coach. Joe Brady, great years of offense, head coach. Davis Webb would be the same. And you're not promoting Davis Webb, you'd lose him. So if you're banking this whole thing on seeing what the OC is, wouldn't it have made more sense to have hired the OC you thought was going to be that game changer as your head coach? That way you're not only getting the philosophy, you're getting the X's and O's, the scheme, your guy. You're also not going to lose him. He's going to be in the building for the next 5 years. Hell Hydra again. Brady has always been propped up by great QBs. Burrow at LSU in 2019. Josh the last 2 years. His scheme is awful, and now nothing is going to change. I thought Joe Brady was good in the postseason. I did. I thought the Bills played really well offensively. I mean, you can't... They turned it over 5 times. I can't pin that on Joe Brady. Turning it over 5 times against Denver. And I thought he was real good against Jacksonville. I thought that they looked really good against Jacksonville, against a stout defense, both games. Once again, though, came up short in the end. Came up short in the end 3 straight years. And yeah, we don't know with Joe Brady. We don't know. Propped up by great QBs, we don't know. Once again, they'll still have success. The Bills will have success with Joe Brady as head coach. But they were going to have success. They were going to have continued success with Sean McDermott. They were going to have success. I thought the whole point of making a new hire and firing McDermott was to go beyond the success you've been having. If they were satisfied with the sustained success that they've had, Sean McDermott would still be the head coach and we wouldn't even be having this stream right now. If ownership was satisfied with the success they've had up until this point, Sean McDermott would never have been fired. I thought the whole point of moving on from McDermott was that you were trying to go beyond the success you've already had. This does not necessarily signal that. This sort of signals that you've been satisfied with the success that has been garnered with Bean and with Brady, and Sean McDermott was just the fault for all these losses in the end. Once he's gone, everything will be better. Aoife saying, my existence broken. Have to my existence because I forgot my plot. Bah, I deleted my DM. I'll send you a DM on Discord later, but it can make sense logically. We have Chris the Stairs. They hired Brady the same way that Bean drafts. Best guy left on the board, culture guy, high character, missing out on a freak like Udinsky Kubiak. It does feel, that is a great comparison. Like, it just does feel like this isn't the most elite move. This isn't the biggest gamble. You know what's funny is that Brandon Bean became what Brandon Bean is today because of the gamble he took on Josh Allen. That's what's so confusing about this. Brandon Bean would not be in the position he is in today if it were not for him taking a massive gamble on what was viewed to be a massive project in Josh Allen. Josh Allen was viewed at the time to be a guy that you could not take in the top 10. And if you did, you were taking the risk of the century. Don't you remember that iconic article where the headline was, if Josh Allen works out in the NFL, it will defy math itself? Brandon Bean taking that gamble on Josh Allen was one of the biggest draft gambles ever. When you look back at how it panned out and how successful it's been, at the time, nobody, including Bills fans, thought what Josh Allen has become was in the cards. All you were hoping for was that he was going to be suitable. He was going to be fine. I don't think anybody was anticipating he was going to become one of the league's best quarterbacks, maybe the best. Brandon Bean became what he is today. He made his mark in the NFL by taking one of the bigger risks in recent memory in the draft. Ever since then, it feels like there hasn't been a whole lot of risk. And this doesn't feel risky at all. And I'm not saying you have to take risks to be successful, but sometimes you do. I feel like sometimes you have got to go out of your comfort zone in order to evolve. It felt like this was the time for the Bills to do that. You've been comfortable for the last near decade. It felt like it was time to get a little uncomfortable and see what you have. This doesn't feel like you're trying to get uncomfortable. This just feels like you're trying to make a change for the sake of making a change. So to your point, Bean's hiring coaches the way he drafts, it feels like that. This doesn't feel like a massive gamble. This doesn't feel like you are really trying to shake things up. Jaden, Pats advanced to the Super Bowl, and now the head coach is promoted from within. It's your own personal hell. Patriots fire their head coach, hire from outside the building, go to a Super Bowl in year one. Seahawks fire their head coach, hire from outside the building, go to the Super Bowl in year two. It's not often you see this elevated success from promotion from within. It just doesn't happen all that often. And it's because there's ties to the previous regime that was let go. Usually the whole point of letting go of the previous regime is because you're trying to evolve beyond that. Promoting from within does not signal that you're trying to evolve beyond what you already were. Teddy, after Dorsey, Keon, etc., if Josh approves, I'm out. Listen, there's no other... You cannot draw any other conclusion beyond the fact that Josh Allen was on board with this. It was well reported that Josh Allen was going to be a part of this hiring. There is no way they made this hiring despite Josh Allen. I'm not saying Josh Allen said, it's Joe Brady or nobody. I'm telling you right now, I don't care who else you want. It's Joe Brady. I'm not saying that. But this idea that he wasn't on board, how can we draw that conclusion? We can't. There's no way we can come to any other conclusion than Josh Allen was on board for this hiring. If he wasn't, then why the hell was he a part of the process to begin with? The Buffalonian. I just don't understand how you have a guy who wants to be your head coach, who had your offense 17th most points of all time, and go a different direction. That's the one thing here. Out of all that's transpiring here, the one thing here is you're just left saying, I just don't understand. I don't get it. Whether it's a home run hire or not, I don't get how the Bills have handled this last week. And I feel like a lot of people feel the same. Sharon, Everything seems so shady right now. McDermott looks like the fall guy while his staff gets promoted. I don't see how you could view it any other way. McDermott has wholeheartedly been painted as the fall guy here. When you promote the GM and promote your OC just to have McDermott fired, how can you view it any other way? How? Whether you hated him and wanted him gone, whether you loved him and wanted to keep him forever, I don't think anybody wanted, I never heard anybody saying they wanted McDermott gone to promote Joe Brady. I've never heard that be said before by anybody. In a comment section, on a show, anything. I've never heard anybody say that. I always heard people wanting to move on from McDermott because they wanted what? They wanted change. They wanted to go in a brand new direction, take a risk, take a gamble, really flips the script. I never heard anybody say, I want McDermott gone and I want Brady promoted. Never. From anyone. So even those who wanted McDermott gone, I got to imagine you're sitting here as perplexed as people who didn't want him gone. I mean, I feel like you're sitting here and you're saying, yeah, I wanted McDermott gone, but I wanted significant change. I wasn't asking for this. Raggedy. Brady saved this organization after Dorsey, manufacturing the most points in Bills history. Got Josh first MVP. Every playoff loss, put up 30. McDermott defense gives up 30 every time. I believe in Brady. He has juice. Brady's done it. He's done a phenomenal job. Like, I'm not dissing what he's done as the OC. Once again, my whole point here and where my confusion stems from is if they hit the proverbial playoff wall, would that not indicate that they hit the wall with everybody? With Bean, with McDermott, with Joe Brady? Or was it just the fact that Sean McDermott was the sole problem? He was the wall. The takeaway here is Sean McDermott was the wall that kept the Bills from the Super Bowl, and everybody else in front of that wall was just waiting to knock it down. Was waiting for that wall to be knocked down so they can move forward. That's what this feels like. Sean McDermott was that proverbial wall, and everybody else standing alongside the wall was waiting for that wall to fall so they could then advance. I get what you're saying. Joe Brady's resume with Buffalo is certainly stellar. Clearly, it just got him a head coaching job. And he was up for other head coaching jobs as well. But once again, you're going to have the same offense. You're now losing the defense of McDermott. And as I indicated earlier, yes, this offense year in and year out with Josh Allen has been one of the league's best. But you're talking 3 years in a row where the Bills offense, despite putting out a damn good game for the most part, they did come up short in the end just as much as anybody. They came up short. Like, I get it. Like, they were great. Josh Allen wins the MVP, towards the top of the league and everything. James Cook wins the rushing title. But they also came up short, and they also were part of that proverbial playoff wall. At least that's how I see it. Aoife, I can prove the why. I will do it on Discord DM. It's too long for Super Chat, and I'm going broke because of Terry Pagula. I'll be on the lookout for it, Aoife. Matthew, does this get us Davis Webb at OC? I'm not sure. That's the next question. What does this mean for coordinating positions? I'm looking online here to see if anything's being updated. I can't imagine it happens that rapidly. I'm kind of sifting through it, and you guys let me know in the comments if anything else comes about. Maybe it is Davis Webb. But as I said, if Davis Webb comes in and they have all this success on offense, he's gone within a year. Rakeem Davis. This is just a plan all along. I don't know. Was it? They interviewed 9 candidates, but was this always the plan? You had Joe Brady in the building. I can't believe it's hard to believe, right, that everyone else failed so badly at their interviews that they just had to go with Joe Brady. I feel like you could, whether or not it's true is one thing, whether or not we'll ever know is another. Could this have been the plan all along? Yes, we're going to do the semantics. We're going to go through our interviews, but we're pretty sure we already know where we're going to go. And this didn't really leak either. Didn't it not feel like the vibe you were getting from reporters, the media, just the general sentiment? Did it not feel like they were going to go with either Dable or Dinsky or Davis Webb? Didn't it feel like that? It really never felt like this was going to be the move. Seeing a chat here that I think is interesting, and I agree with this. John Stafford saying, you can make the same criticisms about Brady that you can make about literally any other head coach candidate outside of the fact that he's not new to the organization. That's dead on. Absolutely dead on, John. That's the key here is not new to the organization. What's leaving everybody so flabbergasted right now is essentially the failures of the Bills as of late were pinned on the coaching staff. We know that to be true, down to the fact that Brandon Beane, according to Terry Pagula, wasn't even at fault for drafting Keon Coleman. It was the coaching staff's fault. So you blame the coaching staff for hitting the proverbial wall, yet you promote from within that same coaching staff to fill the head coaching spot. You're dead on. You can make the same criticisms about Brady that you can make with all these other candidates. No head coaching experience, young. Do you really want to give the keys to the organization on a guy with no experience at the position? You certainly can make all those claims. The difference is that it sort of contradicts the firing of Sean McDermott, where you pin the blame on the coaching staff. You say you hit this proverbial wall. You say it's time for change, yet you promote from within that same staff. It's not even that Joe Brady's a bad hire. I bet you if Joe Brady was say Davis Webb was already the Bills OC over the last 4 years, and Joe Brady was the OC in Jacksonville, and the Bills hired Joe Brady. I bet you a lot of people would be thrilled about it. But the reason why they'd be thrilled is because it would feel like you are going in a completely different direction. When you are told that these Buffalo Bills are going to be going in a new direction, when you are told that the failures of this team lie exclusively on the coaching staff, and then you promote that same coaching staff, it's very hard to just take it for what it is and be like, oh, yeah, this is great. It just seems very... I don't know. Confusing. Matthew's saying the coup is complete. I hope to God somebody gets a sit down with Sean McDermott, like a one-on-one. Wouldn't you love to hear his side of this whole thing? I mean, what do you think McDermott's thinking right now? What do you think McDermott's thinking right now, a week removed from being fired, where he sees Brandon Beane be promoted and Joe Brady be promoted? Wouldn't you just love to hear what his take is on this whole thing? I feel like we're hearing from like reporters like Tyler Dunn, we're hearing all these reports about how everything was bad with McDermott, all that McDermott did wrong. I feel like we're only hearing one side of the story, though. I would just be interested in hearing what McDermott's thoughts are on this whole thing, getting both sides. You can't help but wonder how he's watching this all unfold. You can't help but wonder. And 306 House is saying, like, there's more than we'll ever know. 100%. All I've been left with during this whole process here is a just Rolodex of questions and a Rolodex of, man, would I love to know this? Would I love to know that? Roger saying, letting Brandon Beane hire the next head coach after this many failures is organizational malpractice. Same GM, same roster flaws. And the majority of us felt this instantly. When I came on here, when McDermott was fired, I immediately came on when the news broke. And like many of you, I understood the need for change. I understood a change needed to be made. And then when I watched the Patriots go to the Super Bowl, that need for change was even further emphasize. No question about it. But right when McDermott was fired, in the same exact press release, you promote Brandon Beane. And it just was awfully confusing. Where your takeaway is the organizational failures lie solely on the head coach, nothing to do with the GM. Even though last year, unarguably, Brandon Beane had his roughest year as GM of the Buffalo Bills. The WGR debacle, not adding any wide receivers. The Darius Slay debacle. The trade deadline debacle where you had Jalen Waddle allegedly, but you didn't give up the correct pick. Miami wanted the following year's first round. Beane wouldn't come off of this year's first round to make the switch. Don't land him. Also in this past offseason, you let go of your former first round pick, right? In Elam. So you look at this whole year, and it was super rough on Beane. And he lost a lot of goodwill with the public. That interview with GR, in combination with how he handled the trade deadline, sort of saying this isn't fantasy football, and then to try and overcome that from a PR perspective, you put out the story that you had Jalen Waddle, but couldn't get the right trade on the table, even though the trade was on the table. It just came down to Beane not making the switch of the first rounds. I don't know how you could view this as some major transition into another new era of Buffalo Bills football. This is the same era with a familiar face in a new position. Jason Conklin. Why does there need to be this big change? The true question is, can they add game changers outside? The defense should change with a new DC. And this is what it's probably all going to come down to, Jason. At the end of the day, what will bring about the most change is personnel. You just watched the NFC Championship. Did you watch what Puka Nacua did for the Rams in that game? And more importantly, did you watch what JSN did for the Seahawks in that game? 10 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown. What's going to bring about the most change isn't necessarily the head coach. It's going to be personnel, and that once again comes down to Brandon Beane and the pressure's on. Caroline enters the building. She's been out all day. The Buffalo Bills have their new head coach.
Can I guess who it is?
Yeah.
Zoe Bell.
Nope. They promoted their offensive coordinator.
Oh.
You weren't expecting that? Nobody was.
I didn't want the inside going up. I wanted the outside.
My wife says she did not want the inside going up. She wanted the outside. And I think you're nailing it. I think a lot of people wanted that. No, Jason, to your point, why does there need to be this big change? I guess to your point, there doesn't need to be this big change. But then again, the question to that would be, oh, poor Zoe. Zoe. She's tired, huh? Poor Zoe. There doesn't need to be this big change, right? But I guess the way to respond to that would be, then why was there a need for change at all? Why was there a need for change at all? If you're going to make change, why wouldn't you make significant change? Because if the true failures of the Bills lied on the coaching staff, then why wouldn't you go and get an entirely new coaching staff? There doesn't need to be a big change, but they made a big change. They already made a huge change firing McDermott. So if you're going to go that route and you're going to get rid of a coach of nearly a decade, wouldn't that indicate that you are trying to go down a completely different path? Instead, you're going down the same path with just a different leader from within the same tribe. That's all it is. But at the end of the day, you're right. Can they add game changers? Can they add personnel? Now, I wonder, this is the funny thing, too. Like, what happens? Say Brandon Beane goes nuclear this offseason. He adds, let's just go crazy here. Let's just say he somehow pulls off Justin Jefferson. And this Bills offense turns into the 07 Patriots as a result. Remember when Randy Moss joined the Patriots in 07 and they were the greatest offense we've ever seen? Is that going to be the result of Joe Brady being the head coach, or is that going to be the result of the fact that Josh Allen now has his Randy Moss? That's the interesting thing. Would Sean McDermott not have won as well if Josh Allen had his Randy Moss? But it won't matter. Joe Brady will get the credit. and Sean McDermott will once again get buried. Sean couldn't win it. But in reality, would they have not just won with better personnel, regardless of who was coaching? So it's a good point you make. That really will be the most significant change or lack of change. Personnel. Low Piccolo. What moves could they make now that'll have you feel a little optimistic? A Weber Dable as OC could help me a little, and Babish gone as DC. So Dable's off the board. We'll see what they do with Davis Webb. Brian Dable took the head coach or the OC job in Tennessee. I'm gonna refer back to what Jason just said. And it's not that I'm not optimistic. I was gonna be optimistic regardless. I never thought that firing McDermott was going to be this stamp on the Buffalo Bills downfall. I just didn't. Regardless of how bad that press conference was, regardless of how the McDermott firing was handled, regardless of firing McDermott, I never thought all this was going to translate into this significant avalanche. And that's because the Bills have Josh Allen. So I'm not even pessimistic here. I'm just confused. That's all. I'm not even pessimistic. I am just flat out perplexed. But you're asking what would make me feel more optimistic. I'm going to refer back to what Jason said. And that is, let me see how this offseason goes. Let me see what Brandon Beane does. Let me see how he works this cap, and let me see how he makes this team better. He's already started off here by making his head coaching hiring. Now he's got to make sure that head coach succeeds. And the best way to do that, the only way to do that, is to give them the personnel to succeed. So what would have me feeling more optimistic? Well, I think it's the same thing that would have everybody feeling more optimistic. Get game changers on this team. I just mentioned how much of a game changer JSN is for Seattle. Puka, Devontae Adams for LA. That's what would make everybody feel more optimistic. Personnel. Aoife, I'll prove it after stream, but I need therapy now. Dead Reckoning. How does firing McDermott and promoting his staff look to the players who love McDermott? I didn't even think about that. No change, no new voice, just more of the same. That's a great point you make. Because you're keeping the same culture, yet you're getting rid of the guy who orchestrated it. It's a great question. How does firing McDermott and promoting his staff look to the players who love McDermott? I think it looks the same that it looks to us. It looks like a lateral move. It looks like an uninspired move. It looks like a change for the sake of making a change. It's a great question, though. Michael McKeon should have just brought back Marv at this point. Marv would have loved it, wouldn't he have? Dylan Cooper stopping by, throwing in a super chat. Elliot, this is addition by subtraction move by the Bills. Whether it is extremely smart or stupid, that is the $500,000 question. Hashtag I'm worried. That is the $500,000 question. And it's the thing that none of us will know until we know. Is it smart or is it stupid? We'll find out this time next year. Are the Bills going to be moving on to Super Bowl 61 this time next year, or are they going to be sitting around doing what they're doing right now, packing their lockers? That's when we'll find out if this is extremely smart or stupid. But I'll tell you what, the criticism will never be higher if they don't end up getting it done. Maybe it won't be this upcoming year, but they have got to get it done within this 5-year stretch here, or the criticism will never be higher. Aoife saying, dreams never die. Let it out, Z-Bot. I'm an unofficial therapist. Jay Ham, the real question is the overall defense. What's the defense going to look like? Who is the new OC going to be? Also, they need to lock in Justin Jefferson now. Yeah, we were just talking about Justin Jefferson. That would be like, you know, say you're a kid and you're on a basketball team and your dad doesn't make a single game all year. He's at work. He can't get out of work. He doesn't make a single game all year. You're upset at your dad because he just didn't deliver. He wasn't there when you needed him. How do you make it up to the kid? Well, the dad comes home and he's got a brand new PS5. Walks into the door. He's got a PS5 in the box. The kid's going to be feeling pretty good. Oh, I love you, Dad. Oh, my God, I can't believe you got me this. Thanks so much. All is forgotten. The PS5 in this analogy is Justin Jefferson. The PS5 in this analogy is fill in the blank top tier wide receiver. And I got to think Brandon Beane knows this. I got to think that Brandon Beane knows really the only way I get back in the good grace of this fan base is if I add top tier elite game changing personnel this offseason, whether it be in the draft, whether it be in free agency, a trade, whatever. Shafto, Brady says, I'm coming to get you. Shout out to Shafto for being a member for 36 months. Appreciate you, brother. Fluff saying, the way this regime runs things, I doubt JA had a vote, a say, sure, but they were going to pick their guy in spite of what JA wants. Just feels that way. I don't know, Fluff. I don't know. Why do you feel that way? Because I feel like we've been given every reason to feel the opposite of that. It was rumored that Josh Allen wanted Joe Brady when they got rid of Dorsey. That's what he got. It was rumored that he wanted Keon Coleman in the draft. That's what he got. And they had him in the room for these interviews. I think it was a bit more than a say. I'm not saying he made the final decision and he inked the deal. And I'm not saying he had the majority say. But I think it was more than just a thumbs up or thumbs down. I really do feel like he weighed in on this. Why else would you have him in the interviews evaluating these prospects for coach? Get right. Too much overreacting. It comes down to the DC. There's so much more to unfold here, obviously. Who are the coordinators going to be? Now, to this point, whether this is true or not, but Fluff is saying, I doubt JA had a vote, a say, sure, but they were going to pick their guy anyways. Peter Schrager, 15 minutes ago, says, quote, a note on Josh Allen's role in the Bills head coaching search. He was in the room for many of the candidates' in-person interviews and got to see behind the curtain on the process and offer his opinions on each. He wasn't part of narrowing of the final list of final head coaching decision. That kind of seems like a PR tweet to me. Maybe something he was told to put out. Why would he not be a part of it if they had him be a part of the process? Why have him be a part of it at all then? It doesn't even make any sense. Why would you have Josh Allen be a part of the hiring process if he wasn't going to be a part of narrowing down the candidates? Once again, I'm not saying he needed to be the guy who made the decision, but if you were going to be getting his opinions and you were going to have him weigh in on the decision, so much so that you have him in the room for the interview, why does Josh Allen need to get a peek behind the curtain into the process? What's he trying to become, a GM? No. You're giving him a peek behind the curtain of the process so that he can be part of the process. Why would he not have a say in narrowing down the list if he had a say in being in the room and evaluating these guys? But allegedly, according to Peter Schrager, he was not part of narrowing down the final list. That just doesn't really add up to me. Walt saying, only the Bills can find a way to bring the keep McDermott and fire McDermott together. It's a good way to put it. By making a move that makes everyone collectively say, WTF. Yeah, it's a good way to put it, Walt. It does feel like you're trying to split the baby here. You got, 60,000 signatures on a petition to keep McDermott. You got God knows how many thousands of people that said, I need McDermott gone today. Now you go down the middle here, and it's like I mentioned earlier, where I asked those who wanted McDermott gone. I had not seen a single person say, I want McDermott gone and I want Joe Brady up. I hadn't seen that anywhere from anybody, fans, media alike. So you're right. This is one of the only moves they could have made that would have left both sides of the aisle saying, huh? Yeah, I wanted McDermott gone, but I didn't want to promote from within and have the same staff. I didn't want McDermott gone, but now that he is gone, I didn't want to promote from within the same staff. If we're going to make a change, make a change. Michael McKeon saying, or Michael Cahan saying, Jim Schwartz for DC. I keep seeing a lot of that in the comments. Obviously one of the top DC candidates, but as I mentioned earlier, with the list of head coach vacancies being narrowed down to 3, with the Bills now making their hire, with the list of candidates ever shrinking, I wonder if Jim Schwartz just ends up getting that head coaching job in Cleveland. If not, could be on the table for Bills DC. This will be, of course, the next thing we start to monitor, the biggest thing we start to monitor. Who is coming in to be a part of Joe Brady's staff? How much similarity will there be? Mr. Invisible, to quote Josh Allen in the Texans game, what the F are we doing? Bean usurped Kevin Adams as public enemy number one in Western New York. And the weird thing is he felt like amongst the villains in this whole storyline, going into that Black Monday where McDermott was fired, it already had felt like Brandon Bean was the primary villain in all of this. It had felt like he had superseded McDermott as the villain. And I feel like this is promoting him and then hiring Joe Brady is sort of compounding that. Henry's saying, I don't really understand this move whatsoever. Fire the coach to not really change anything? Brady was last on my list. He won't change personnel or play calling at all. The play calling, I don't know why anybody would think that would change. Why would it change? It hasn't changed since he's been the OC. Why would it change because he's the head coach? Personnel, I don't know. That's all going to come down to Bean. Sure, Joe Brady will be in the room and have a say, but wouldn't you think he would have already been in the room and had a say as the OC? Maybe not nearly as much as McDermott did, but I'm sure he was still a part of the process. We need this on offense. We need this. I'm trying to do this. But the main point you're making is the main point that I think everyone's taking away from this and that is you fire the coach to then just promote his OC. The issues, according to Terry Pagula, were solely on the coaching staff, yet you elevate that same coaching staff. Joseph, I cannot wait to see more bubble screens in high leverage situations. Beth, Josh Allen's comfy choice. Peter, like I just said, Peter Schrager said this. Apparently, this has nothing to do with Josh Allen, which is just, these are contradictions left and right. This included. Josh Allen in the interviews, Josh Allen a part of the hiring process, yet allegedly Josh Allen not a part of narrowing down the final list. Josh Allen not a part of making the final choice. We'll never know. Richie Fresh. We all agreed for May playoff games that it's been the D letting us down, 30 points more, etc. Now we have an offensive mind and peeps are losing their mind. My God, let us see the new OC, etc. before we have aneurysms. I think people are losing their mind, Richie, because they just don't understand what's happening. Yes, everybody wanted an offensive mind, but I don't think everybody wanted the same offensive mind that was already in the building. I don't think anybody wanted to stick with what was already there. That's why you're seeing so many people question why Bean is still there. That was the first question I asked, and many other people asked when Sean McDermott was fired. Why is it just McDermott? Why is Bean sticking around? Because we had all thought that everybody played a part in this blame. But apparently not. Joe Brady, no fault. Brandon Bean, no fault. Sean McDermott, all the fault. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I'm willing to be optimistic here. I mean, I am. Nobody wants this to work out more than me and all of you. We want this to work out. Nobody's sitting here scratching their head because they want it to fail. But you're left sitting here scratching your head nonetheless because of how confusing it is. And I know you keep saying, the D's letting us down 30 points or more. I get that. But it wasn't just the defense. It felt like it was collective efforts in the postseason, at least the last 3 years. You get to the divisional round or farther in the last 3 years, and in all three instances, the Bills lose by just 3 points. The Bills' offense had the ball at the end. The Bills failed to score to tie or take the lead in all three situations. It was not just the D. Would the argument be over Sean McDermott's time that it was primarily the D? Yes. I don't think anybody's arguing against that. Was it just the defense? Certainly not. The Bills' offense had 5 turnovers in that Denver Broncos game. The amount of short fields given to Denver, fumble before the half, 3 points. Fumble outside of right off the bat of the second half, 3 points. Interception in overtime, game-winning field goal. The defense in that Broncos game, they only allowed 1 touchdown in the entire second half. Collective blame. Primarily D, yes. Exclusively D, no. Not Troop 5389 stopping by, giving some love. Appreciate it. He's saying, we needed change. Literally the Jets without Josh Allen. Spinotu, if I think about this hire for 13 seconds, oh no. How about that one, Caroline? Can't help but think about it, though. Once again, this would have made so much more sense if Sean McDermott was fired after 13 seconds. We would have been alleviated of all confusion. Matt View, I haven't felt this much dread since the drought. I mean, it just does feel. I don't know if dread's the right word, but it's certainly, I haven't felt this much confusion. I haven't been this lost during the Josh Allen era. There was really no reason to be lost. Aaron Williams, make most out of Josh Allen's prime, conservative move, wide receiver. And once again, I think this is what it is all boiling down to. Can they add personnel to make this move look like the right one? Michael Warfield saying the 5th fall of Buffalo. Oh, please no. We don't need any more falls, Michael. We just don't. We don't need any more falls. Money Mitch, the lead lobster. I'm coping that these interviews were for staff hires as well. Well, McDaniel, he backed out, but no. Shieldhouse, maybe. Pass game coordinator in LA. So potentially. Like I said, Dable, no. DC, maybe. Anthony Lynn's name's out there, right? They didn't interview Schwartz, but I don't think he was ever going to be up for a head coaching spot unless he takes the Cleveland job. Other OCs, like Clint Kubiak's not going to make that move. Udinsky already is going to go back to Jacksonville. Davis Webb would be the only one here that I think could happen. Thomas. So Brady's offense performing in 3 playoff games is thrown out the window because of 3 drives, yet McDermott's 33 points per game is acceptable. Hughes made it clear how the good defensive players felt about him. I saw Jerry Hughes' tweets. And Thomas, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that Joe Brady's offense is the sole reason the Bills lost in the playoffs. I'm just saying to think that it's entirely on the defense is just not the right way to look at it. You had 3 games where you had 3 opportunities at the end. Maybe you don't cash in on all of them. They didn't cash in on any of them. I mean, you're saying the game is thrown out the window because of 3 drives. That'd be the equivalent of saying McDermott's career is thrown out the window because of 13 seconds. McDermott's career is thrown out the window because the Bills had 5 turnovers against the Broncos. McDermott's defense is thrown out the window because Tyler Bass misses a field goal against the Chiefs in the divisional round. I mean, we could play this game. At the end of the day, you're right, though. It all just comes down to little moments. The Bills have failed in the little moments, but they've also failed offensively in those moments as well. Collectively, yes, the defense has been the bigger issue. 30-plus points per game in the postseason is unacceptable. That's why McDermott's gone. But once again, the offense also wasn't this, it wasn't this overarching, foolproof, guaranteed solution at the end of the games in the most pivotal moments. I'm not knocking Joe Brady's offense and what they've done. They've been one of the top offenses with him, but they were one of the top offenses before him. And I'm not sitting here making this argument that Sean McDermott should still be here. I was starting to come to terms with the fact, and I have accepted fully the fact, that they needed to make a change. And I understand all of the faults of Sean McDermott. I'm just saying that it's not entirely the defense. I thought the defense did a pretty damn good job against Denver. I thought they did a really damn good job against Jacksonville. But it's not to overlook what they did in the years past. I know it was a failure. And I know that that's led to McDermott being fired. And I'm on board with that. It was deserved. But was Joe Brady being promoted deserved? That's the question we're left wondering. Aoife, I'm writing all the super chats and Zbot's replies, and I will write a proof and send to Zbot. Yes, it's a proverbial wall, but it's also not possible. Get right. Does Babbage come back? We need a new scheme. It's a good question. I don't know. Once again, it would be the safe move, would it not be? Just to stick with what you had? Who's available for DC that Brady's going to target in on? Will it be anybody new? I'd love to see what Mike Tomlin is up to. I don't know if he'd do it. Thomas P. Brady has his flaws, but I bet he can self-reflect. And with full control now, I think he could even improve. He's shown he can be creative. The philosophy change alone is going to be huge for this team. We'll see. I mean, did he or did he not have full control of the offense? He had about as much of control of the offense as I would imagine. I just don't think Sean McDermott was meddling much into the offense. Maybe a little bit here and there, but he had full control of the offense for the most part. As everybody keeps saying, the DC hire is going to be very interesting. That's the one we're looking for here. After 40 years of being a fan, says Models Clamadier, after 40 years of being a fan, this team is going to give me a heart attack before a Super Bowl. I mean, you're not kidding. Have we not all been on the precipice of one numerous times a year, every year for the last several decades? Jaden Brown, Patriots fan here, very surprised Dable not hired. And I think that's where I'm also surprised. Because if you wanted to go the safe move, that felt like that was going to be the safe move that would also check the boxes. And I think it would have gone over well with fans. Sure, you would have had people that didn't love it, but I think it would have went over well. It would have went over far well than this. Newbie driver. Z-Bow, let's put some faith in the defense. Who's the DC? As we've been talking about Newbie, that's the question. I mean, that's going to be pivotal. Any thoughts about Jordan Poyer? See, I don't think you can do that. You can't go from Sean McDermott being this seasoned veteran defensive coach / coordinator, play caller. You can't go to Jordan Poyer, fresh out of the league, to just start calling the defense. You got it. That's why Jim Schwartz's name keeps coming up. Jim Schwartz has been a defensive coach in this league basically my entire life, forever. You can't go young. You can't go young gun, new hot shot at D coordinator with no experience, especially with an offensive head coach. You need stability at defense. You need somebody you can trust and rely on with a track record. That's how I see it. Offense with Josh Allen, I feel like you have the liberty to get a bit more creative. Defense, though, with an offensive head coach, you have got to make sure you nail that. Now it's the biggest hire remaining. JD, this reeks of a Josh Allen pick for head coach. Comfort, familiarity. He also selected Ken Dorsey, Dalton Kincaid, and Keon. Yeah, we went over this, JD. Peter Schrager reports that Josh Allen was not in on this final selection process, and that doesn't make sense to me. I don't think Josh Allen was the sole reason they went this way. You know what's so amazing, though? You know what's so incredible? You know who's probably the best defensive coordinator candidate out there right now? Take a guess as to who probably would be the best defensive coordinator remaining right now. You know what the answer is. Sean McDermott. This is another reason why this also is just very confusing. You get rid of the D coordinator, essentially. You get rid of the D coordinator to then keep the same offensive coordinator. And now you have to replace the defensive coordinator. And right now, currently, the best option for the replacement at defensive coordinator would be Sean McDermott. One more thing to add to the confusion. If you were to look at it right now, unbiased, I see Lou Anarumo's name being brought up, right? Anthony Lynn. See some guys' names in here. That's fine. There's certainly candidates. Jim Schwartz. But Sean McDermott would be on a very short list right now of best possible candidates available for defensive coordinator. So this just furthers the confusion. It compounds the confusion. Where you had that guy in the building, he's now gone. You keep the same offensive mind in the building, he's promoted. Now you're completely left vacant at the defensive side of things. And you, of course, can't hire him as defensive coordinator because then there's a power struggle there. You just can't do that. You can't do that. It's not even remotely in the cards. Triggs saying this is why Bean should have been gone too. I think everybody, that was the start of this whole thing. If it was just Sean McDermott, if McDermott and Bean were gone in one swoop, even if McDermott and Bean both got fired and Brady got promoted, it would still be infinitely less confusing than how it's gone down up until this point. Keeping two of the three really leaves you scratching your head. If you would have promoted one, maybe you could have, it just would have made a little bit more sense. Not a ton more, but a little bit more. It's more confusing that you keep two of the three. It just does not indicate this changing of the guard by any stretch. Nick stopping by, showing some love. Appreciate you, Nick. Richie Fresh back in. Genuine question. Why are we acting like McDermott was so polished? Respect. I don't know what you mean by that, Richie. Polished? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Let me know what you mean by polished. Clive, is it possible Pagula is simply cheap and wants to save money by promoting internally? Just a thought. We've never gotten a vibe, really, that Pagula is cheap. I mean, they paid Josh Allen about as big of a contract as you'll see in the sport. They wound up paying James Cook when that was a huge debate. They did go out and get Diggs at the time. I don't know. I don't think we have any reason to think that Pagula is cheap on this. I just feel like this was the easy move. If there was one angle to look at here, maybe it's more of this was the easy move to make. I don't think it's got anything to do with financials. Justin, Allen is like what? 0 for 3 on his guys? You know what the big takeaway here is beyond the confusion? The big takeaway here is I don't think from a game-to-game standpoint, I don't think much is going to change in terms of the overall results of the Buffalo Bills outcomes from game to game. And it's just because of Josh Allen being the quarterback. I don't think much is going to be changed in terms of the success. The question is this going to be the mark of demarcation that separates the success that the Bills had with McDermott to even more enhanced success post-McDermott? With Josh Allen, it's very hard to sit here and argue that this team is going to just spiral. They're going to be at the bare minimum competing for that division and for a wild card spot for years to come, regardless of who they had hired. The big question was, were they going to find somebody that made it seem as though they were going to rise from a sustained high levels of success to an even further level of success that they've obviously been trying to get to, knocking down that proverbial wall? But if that proverbial wall was the coaching staff and it was already in the building, then how is eradicating that proverbial wall promoting from within? Darth saying, folks need to chill, man. This could be like the Broncos many years ago when they let go of Reeves and replaced him with the OC. I mean, sure, it could, like I just said, this idea that this is going to fail mightily, I don't see. There's no way. I don't think it was going to fail with anybody. The bigger question was, is it the right move to make the necessary changes needed to get over the hump? And when it doesn't seem like much change has been made, it's hard to argue that it's going to be. But only time will tell. Sonny, go through all that for an in-house candidate. Yeah, I know. Teddy, another large concern. Does anything about Joe Brady scream leader of men? Someone who can inspire his players when they're down. I don't see it at all. I don't know if we have the sample size yet to draw that conclusion. I've never heard anything in question about Joe Brady's ability to be a leader of men. I don't think we haven't seen that ability. I mean, that would have been the same question you'd have about any of these candidates not named Brian Dable. The other candidates were all going to be first-time head coaches. So I think naturally you were going to have that question about any of those candidates. But I don't think we have any reason to believe he's not. That's one thing that'll, of course, be that will be discovered in time. But I don't get that vibe from him. I don't necessarily get that vibe. Like Mike McDaniel, I got that vibe from him. That just doesn't strike me as a leader of an organization. That strikes me as a offensive guru, kind of that quirky mind. Not like, for instance, I always found it incredibly interesting that Mike McDaniel and Dan Campbell had the same exact job in this league, where you had the alpha bite your kneecaps off, gigantic, get in your face, let's go type guy. And then Mike McDaniel, who wears Gucci loafers and drives a matted out Bentley. I always just found that interesting. NV Mafia. Bean and Pagula have set a new world record for fastest time to make a fan base town and city hate you this past week. Welcome to hell, everyone. Let's walk through it together. Much love, Bob. Much love to you, NV. Listen, no matter where you are in the degree of confusion here and disdain and frustration, one thing is inevitable. The goodwill that the Bills have created over the last 9 years has certainly taken a massive hit. To what degree, that's up for your interpretation, and you can argue it any which way. There is no question about it, though. It has taken a hit, a noticeable hit. The way that this has all gone down over the last week has certainly put a black eye on the way the Bills are viewed throughout the league, by their fan base, by the league, the media, etc. No question about it. This is why they have to overcome this, and only time will tell. But this last week has gone a long way, yes, towards eating away at a lot of goodwill built up over a decade. I mean, you had decades worth of mediocrity and failure in just bad football, bad organization. And that was completely flipped within the McDermott, Bean, Allen regime. And within 1 week, you really have done a significant job in losing a lot of trust that was built up over that time period. What now has to happen is rebuilding that trust, and that's what we're starting to enter into here, this next period, where that trust needs to be rebuilt. Andy Larson, wow, what a wasted opportunity to bring in new offensive-minded head coach. Everyone other than McDermott got a raise. What a joke. Everyone did. Everyone got a promotion but McDermott. Once again, one of the primary takeaways you take from this whole thing is that it was viewed within the building that Sean McDermott was the absolute primary problem for this team. Richie Fresh. Sorry. Richie Fresh, here's my issue. Most people want to sign up to clean house. These are the same people that would complain we didn't make playoffs the next few years. You don't always get a Pat Seahawks situation. No, I understand that, Richie. But you know, these are the same people that would complain we didn't make the playoffs the next few years. Like a clean house. Once again, I don't think, no matter what the Bills did, I don't think they were falling off a cliff to where they were not making the playoffs over the next several years. If they do, I mean, no one will be stunned more than me. They've done an incredible, I mean, listen, they've won a playoff game in 6 straight years. Only 3 other organizations have done it. They have, I mean, it would be awfully impressive to continue to do what they've done. And we've gotten awfully lucky in that regard, having a team be as good as they have. We've just been unlucky at the end of things. Maybe they missed the playoffs like the Chiefs just did, or the Ravens did, the Bengals have. Like, it happens. But I just don't see a world where they fall off a cliff and they're just not playoff contenders all of a sudden like that in the blink of an eye. Now, what you're saying here is, you know, most people wanted to sign up to clean house. Well, the reason for that, Richie, is they already made the most significant move. I indicated, this is kind of how I referred to it when McDermott was fired and Bean was promoted. It felt like you were cleaning the guest bedroom and nobody was coming over to stay. It felt like you, instead of cleaning the whole house, you were just cleaning a portion of the house that, in retrospect here, it just felt like, why am I cleaning this room if I'm not going to clean all the other rooms? Why am I cleaning one portion of the house when the rest of the house feels like it's quite dirty itself? And then now, instead of that, it feels like you are just making a bigger mess. You've cleaned one room and you've made larger messes in all the other rooms. It felt like if you were going to clean one room, why you haven't cleaned that room in nearly a decade? You haven't cleaned the house in nearly a decade. If you were finally going to come around to starting to clean up a little bit, why wouldn't you just clean up? You have not cleaned anything in nearly 10 years. Now, all of a sudden, you get the broom out, but you're not going to get the mop out. You're not going to get the vacuum out. You're just going to do a bit of sweeping. Half measure is just what it feels like. Half measure. Jeff King, the Kinger. Let me ask you an honest question. How did we better ourselves with this? Besides giving Josh a yes man and a play pal. This is absolutely pathetic from top to bottom. The top question to me, Jeff, is one of the biggest ones to take away from this whole ordeal. How did we better ourselves with this? That should be the top question you ask. How did the Bills get better in this process? And I don't know. I don't know. Yes, you go from a defensive philosophy at the helm to an offensive philosophy. Many people wanted that, including myself. Okay, check that box. Other than that, how did the Bills better themselves in this process? I don't know if there is some significant argument to be made there. Like if we were on the speech and debate team in high school, and the topic given to the two teams was, I need you to debate how the Buffalo Bills bettered themselves in the last week. One side has to take the pro side, how they bettered themselves. One side has to take the side of how they harmed themselves. Is it not hard to believe that how could you not believe the team that's arguing how they harmed themselves wouldn't wipe the floor with the team arguing that they benefited themselves here? They got better. You just have so much more ammo on the other side, just so much more. But this is the question, right? Deshaun's saying, how did the Bills better themselves? Easy, he says. They got rid of the problem. And that's what time will tell. What we take away from this whole thing, one thing you exclusively take away, unquestionably, is that the Bills ownership 1000% believed that Sean McDermott was the problem, not a problem, not part of the problem, the problem. So to Deshaun's point, how did they better themselves? They got rid of the problem. The only way we'll know if they better themselves is if this team collectively just seems infinitely better, or they take a step forward with allegedly the problem being gone. Time will tell. Speaking of time, 2 hours in the books dissecting what is another page in the Josh Allen era and a wild, crazy, it's another chapter, and a wild, crazy chapter at that that's just getting started. We're just on page 1 of this new chapter. And that new chapter is being led by Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady, who today, January 27th, 2026, has been promoted to the next Buffalo Bills head coach. On the way out the door, I want you to go and give some love to my friends over at Sleeper. Links in the description below. You click that, you sign up for Sleeper. Once you do, you will immediately get a free $20 entry. You can use that on any Sleeper slip, including ones for the Super Bowl, NBA, NHL, you name it, it's all on Sleeper. Once you use your free $20 entry, use the promo code on your screen, BF25. That will get you a 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper terms of use for details. Currently available in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper via the link in the description below. One more super chat before we close up shop. Matt View. My issue is Brady's cute late down play calling and bad final drive speaks to poor decision making in big moments, which greatly worries me. There were already questions about Brady, right? Bubble screens on third down, running the same play over and over. Now, granted, sometimes that was great and it worked when it was working, but there were also times where it wasn't working and you continuously go with it. First down, right? Keep running the ball even though that wasn't working. That seemed to be the case in Jacksonville. There's a litany of examples of this. This is where it gets even broader now. What will the decision-making be at the head coaching spot? Time management, challenges, whatever. It's a whole new ball game, far beyond just the offensive side of things. Once again, time will tell. Speaking of time, yet again, 2 hours in the books. And speaking of time, we will be spending a lot more time going over this and far more, including the Buffalo Bills hiring a new DC or potentially not? Will they retain Bobby Babbage? Will they go in a new direction? We'll find out. Offensive coordinator. They're going to have to get a new one of those because their offensive coordinator is now the head coach. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on everything. This is going to be a wild offseason. I've said that 1,000 times. I'll continue to say it 1,000 times because it is wild. It continues to get wilder. Can't wait to go through it all with you, including today. I'm very happy to have spent this time with you going through the next era here of Buffalo Bills football with Joe Brady leading the helm. Nearly 7,000 of you joined me this afternoon, and I appreciate each and every single one of you. Thanks so much for stopping by. On the way out the door, like button if you could, subscribe button if you could. Rico will be with you tonight to keep talking about this even further. We'll be with you throughout the week to continue to go through this and much more. Looking forward to seeing you then. But in the meantime, once again, thanks so much for tuning into this one. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Much love, as always, and go.